Wonderful. It's really great to be here. It's an honor and a pleasure, and I look forward to getting to connect with everybody here. This is for like with everybody that's spoken today. I mean, everything is from the heart. It doesn't get any more real than what's being shared today. Um, I thought just because I always kind of walk to the beat of my own drum, to perhaps do a little bit of a presentation today, but it gives you an insight of where my mind has gone since my near-death experience, just to give you a little bit of a background without taking too much time. The name of my book is My Experiment with Gravity, and the reason for that's a couple of things, but mainly it started with the fact that my near-death experience was the result of a 26-foot fall out of a tree, and I landed headfirst on concrete. So I was in a coma for 5 days, had massive bleeding on the brain, in the hospital for a month. I had 20 broken bones. I required surgeries and therapy for 2 years. After I got out of the hospital, it was quite the journey back. And I'm grateful that I can play the drums. I'm grateful that I can DJ and train in martial arts and do the things I do now, because back when I was in the hospital, it was suggested I'd be lucky to be walking with a cane and would probably have a permanent limp because I broke my pelvis in 4 places as among the 20 broken bones. Um, all of that is covered in my book. And I would really like to focus today on where my mind has been since. Like a lot of us, I do have a background, where in my case, I've been drug addicted, and I've been through depression, anger, violence. I've got a lot of these stories in my past. Fortunately, most of it's in my more distant past. It's not to suggest I didn't have deeper thoughts. It's not to suggest that there wasn't intelligence here, but I've never thought like this before. If somebody would have told me 10 years ago, my NDE was 7 years ago, if somebody would have told me 10 years ago, even 8 years ago, I'd be presenting something like this right now, I would have said, there's just no way. I'm not that guy. I'm not there. I don't get that stuff. I don't mind talking about it. I have an open mind, but no, I'm not that guy. But yet, this incredible, amazing experience happened. And somehow, someway, I hit my head really hard and knocked something loose. And on the one hand, I do still have issues. It's not like it's an entirely, a peaceful, happy ending in the context of my body. That the vessel definitely has its issues, but my mind, my goodness, my quality of life, the way I approach my life, the things that are manifesting in my life, it's my ability to just put something beautiful out there and know that something beautiful is going to come back around, not just for me, but for everybody that's involved in the experience. So I want to talk today about dreams, which is really the basis of my book. The book is autobiographical, but at the same time, it certainly talks about the near-death experience. It's absolutely an integral part of this, and it's the inspiration. So naturally, it's a big part of the book. But what I realized as I was writing it is I needed to find ways to bring this back down to earth. How do I make it meaningful to life in the here and now? How do I apply these lessons to improve my own life so that I have a chance to go and explain to somebody else ways they may go about this? Because understand, I'm not here to tell anybody anything. I am not telling you the way anything is. This is my experience. This is my reality. And I realize we share this experience in reality, and when I do this, I find most people resonate on much of what I'm talking about. But understand, this is just food for thought. This is my reality, so I will present it as such. But it's food for thought for you to think about how to apply it to your life. If you want to apply it to your life, what it will mean, and give you basically the idea is find your way. Figure out what this means to you, and how you can fulfill that destiny, that which is your highest path, if that is in fact your choice. And if, of course, if we're here today, then I believe that is all of our highest choices. So as I said, my book's called My Experiment with Gravity, but today we're going to talk about the dream within the dream, expanding into consciousness. This is adapted from a 3-hour workshop. So some of this is going to go a little bit fast, but fortunately, you'll be able to go back and hopefully watch it again if you want to review some of this stuff. Because there's a lot to think about here. And I'm very much into the interactivity. And even though we can't talk to each other right now, I'm going to ask you to think about some things. I'm going to ask you to perhaps go with me into some thoughts. Even if we can't communicate directly, we'll communicate empathically, telepathically, intuitively, if you will, because I know we feel each other. The reason I chose this picture for the first photo of this talk is I really appreciate the dynamics of the different senses of dream. Because to me, this reality that we're in is part of the dream. I feel like you've got the adult with a child looking off at the moon and off into the depths of space. You've got so many different dreams and realities taking place and synchronizing all at once to manifest and create this beautiful image that we start this talk with. How could we talk about dreams and not quote Poe? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. And I can't, I mean, I'm trying to find words. I do this stuff all the time. Sometimes I still have a hard time finding the words. But if we start talking about levels of our realities, everything from our deepest thoughts to everything that's happening in the physical world. I mean, you've heard everything in the physical world, the universe is a holographic universe. It's all projections of dreams. It's all projections of thought in one form or another. We've heard this talked about today through many of the speakers. I've got to hear, I think, 4 speakers today, which has been wonderful because so many of the things I want to talk about and I'm going to touch upon, I've heard already touched upon. And for me, that's wonderful affirmation. And for everyone listening, you wonder sometimes we have these different near-death experiences, all of us. They're certainly unique, as all of our experiences in life are unique. But there are certain commonalities to take with every one of these experiences. And getting into the idea of the soul self and love, the idea that this is all thought and mind, that's many of the consistencies that I'm seeing through this wonderful talk today. Now, Merriam-Webster, I appreciate that Merriam-Webster really has this interesting way of defining dreams. I was rather pleasantly surprised by this. I looked around through several different sources, and as you would expect, denotatively speaking, some of them are very dry. This one I thought had covered most of the bases. And we'll just start here. This is, of course, Merriam-Webster, and we're going to get off into what it all means to all of us here in a moment. One interpretation, of course, is the most obvious. That the dream state when we're sleeping. Now, we've had nightmares, we've had beautiful dreams, we've had so many things that happen in that REM sleep. It's a very powerful form of dream state, and I think there's a lot of information to be shared with that, which we're going to definitely be getting into as we get deeper into this presentation. We have the characteristics of like waking dreams, ideas of getting visions. I will talk a lot about imagination. And these visions, these ideas are the dreams of our imagination, or if you will, the dreams of the divine imagination, that divine mind. Now, think about dreaming in terms of what it feels like to say be on a mountaintop someplace, be on a beautiful beach looking out over the ocean. That can be a moment that's very dreamlike in the physical reality. That has a very vision-like surreal quality to it. Oftentimes it does. For me, I find it inspirational. It's one of those things that touches me, and especially post-NDE draws me closer to that surface, closer to that source of the experience, which is the love. Of course, and the most important perhaps, I think all of these dreams are important. I don't think it's maybe fair to say one is really more important than the other, but I appreciate the dreams where we look forward to what we can be. If you're in a place in your life where you don't feel like you are all you can be, you're the person you want to be, you're living the kind of life you want to live, dream it, visualize it. It's a very powerful way to move forward in manifestation of reality. I've got these boxes over here. I'm not quite sure how to move them. Oh, there we go. It's kind of getting in the way of some of the things that I'm trying to look at here with the presentation. Okay, that's much better. So let's talk about our dreams. Now, if you're sitting alone by yourself, or maybe you're sitting with somebody right now, maybe this is an opportunity to be, perhaps one with your thoughts, or perhaps share with somebody who's close to you. And when you think about it within yourself, what is a dream to you? And when you dream, what do you dream about? Do you daydream? Do you think about things during the day? Do you contemplate everything from maybe that meeting you're going to have at, 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Are you going to be thinking about taking maybe one of your kids to the baseball game the next day? Perhaps you are maybe daydreaming about becoming a musician. Maybe you're daydreaming about becoming a painter. Maybe you've taken up artwork and you've decided that you love it, and so now you fantasize about what it's like maybe a few years down the road, what it would be like to be a painter, an artist, and how to be what it is to put on these openings and be able to share this beautiful part of your being with the world. Regarding the sleeping dreams, do you remember your dreams when you sleep? I know I've gone throughout the course of my whole life, and there have been times where I've had the most incredible and brilliant and most lucid of dreams in that dream state. Then there are times where I've gone through periods based on maybe where I was in my space and in my experience where I didn't remember my dreams so much. And whatever dreams I may have remembered were very fragmented. So where are you in that? Do you remember your dreams, and are they lucid? Are they clear? What do you feel when you dream? And even right now, what are you dreaming about? What do you dream about when you're waking and sleeping? All these wonderful questions. You could take, gosh, you could take an hour with these questions to just meditate on them for a while and see what comes to you, especially in the waking state. Because one of the ideas here for this kind of a presentation is opening up those deeper levels so we can bring these dreams, these visions, these deeper thoughts, empathy, intuition, all of that to this life reality. Now, we talked about types of dreaming through Merriam-Webster's, but let's talk about it maybe in a little bit more of a personalized way, although this is kind of a parallel of what was already talked about. When I think about sleep layers, I wonder, have you seen the movie Inception? I will say, I think Inception is a good movie. Now, as somebody who's a near-death experiencer, I'm not trying to be critical here, and I don't have time to go into it, but I do feel like there's a lot of things that were missed. However, what I appreciate about the movie is it drew a lot of connections to the different layers of the dream state. I don't think it's quite so cookie cutter and cut and dry as they made it sound in terms of how you traverse through these deeper layers. But I want to give a couple of examples of my experience in terms of maybe different types of dreams in the sleep state, in the REM state. One of which, of course, is, I think, the most common one we're all have had many times, is those dreams that seem to be these random convergences of these different memories gurgling up from the somewhere down in the depths to create a picture that might have a certain set of abstraction to it, that might have this action going on. Maybe you're going down a street, you're seeing a lot of different people. Maybe you're in the middle of an argument with somebody. Maybe you're actually even, I don't know, perhaps listening to, you know, a story of some type in your dream. But it's that kind of dream where it seems like it's much more randomized. It's sometimes we wake up and go, "What in the world was that?" Yeah, and, you know, contemplating what it was. And when sometimes you tell the story to somebody, it has this oftentimes very abstract nature to it. But then there are these sometimes where maybe you just had a story where you went in your kitchen, you got a glass of water, you sat down, had some breakfast, and it was really maybe that simple, and there wasn't a lot of abstraction. But at the same time, there really didn't seem to be a lot of meaning, at least on the surface. Seems like we have a lot of these dreams, and yes, we could spend a lot of time diving into the potential of what these mean, and also understand what one dream mean. Let me put it like this: just because, say, one person dreams of the ocean, doesn't mean that another person having the same dream of the ocean is dreaming of that for the same reason. Again, we've got to explore the dynamics of all of us as individuals, all the potential of energies that are going into, you know, karma, patterns that go into that moment that might manifest this seemingly random dream. Now, the next dream, something that I work with a lot, especially since my near-death experience, is the one that's more visionary. I find that I can explore my thoughts in my dreams. I find that I can practice my martial arts in my dreams. If I've just learned a new form from my teacher, I am an instructor, but I still also work under an old master, this wonderful, amazing master named Willem de Tor, who's from Java, Indonesia, and he's 82 years old, just incredible. But oftentimes he'll give us a new lesson of some type, and I will literally go in my dream and I'll work on our lesson in my dream. I find that to be a very powerful way to reinforce information, especially for somebody like me who does have a lot of short-term memory issues from hitting my head. And the third form of this dream layer I want to talk about for now, and there's many. I mean, again, we're talking about something that's virtually infinite here. My mother died on December 7th of 1988. And I won't go into that whole story right now. We certainly don't have the time. But it was an unexpected death. I was 22 years old when she died. And that night, after I got the phone call, she died leaving work. She literally just walked out to her car and had a heart attack and died. She didn't even make it to her car. She was already already pronounced dead when the ambulance even arrived. But anyways, the point I'm making here is that she showed up in my dream that night. And this is one of those dreams. Talk about an incredibly immense dream. And I wanted to say right now, real quick, I think every form of these dreams are valid. I'm not going to sit here and say one is really necessarily more valid or more important than another. Although in this particular case, we're talking about my mother, who I was very close to. I'll admit it, I was kind of a mama's boy growing up. I love my mother. My mom and I were definitely tight growing up. In fact, my brother, my mother, and I were all very close, really tight-knit family growing up. Long story about my dad. I love my dad too, but long story there. But my mom came to me in that dream. And it's interesting because I've had, since my mom died, and again, I talk about this in the book, because I said it's very autobiographical. But my mom, I think there's some part of her that realized what was about to happen. I think she realized where I was about to go and how dark it was about to get for me. And I apologize. Yeah, I'm a guy, but I'm a crier. But she came to me and she said to me, listen, no matter whatever happens, know that I'm here with you. I know it's all going to work out. It's going to be okay. You're going to get through it no matter what happens. She was so serious about this. Of course, I'm all elated. I'm in my dream, I'm aware that I just got told my mom died. And there's my mom right in front of me, and I'm hugging her and I'm crying. And I can't believe so whatever she's saying to me at the moment, I was just glad my mom was there. Didn't really occur to me the urgency with which she was speaking until a little bit later. But she said it to me like literally 3-4 times, Rex, I mean it. Okay, I'm just remember this. Just remember this. Don't forget, no matter what happens, no matter where you go here, just remember, I'm with you, and you're going to get through this, okay? Just know it's going to work out. You're going to get through it. Needless to say, in hindsight, of course, I have a lot of years of hindsight. She was right. A lot of things happened that were immensely challenging, that were immensely transformational, and life went extremely dark, but before it ever turned light again. And I can tell that was very much a part of my journey. And again, that's something I talk about in the book. And I have my other presentation we're going to be doing here. I think it's the end of July, manifestation and transformation, karma, dharma, and destiny. I talk about a lot about that type of pattern and that level of the existence in that presentation. It's kind of the sister presentation to this one. I just touched upon visions. Visions can happen whether sleeping or waking. At least for me, they do. They can happen just about at any time. And there are times these visions will come to me at the most inopportune of times. But a very powerful part of the dream state, just the same. Something that, again, part of the foundation of who and what we are inside. It's that connection to those deeper parts of ourselves, especially when we're feeling alone, isolated, and separated, which is so easy to do in this life. That gets me into the idea we talked about the waking dreams a little bit. Now let's talk about deja vu, which I know we've all experienced. I say at least most of us have. Talk about synchronicities and serendipities. Now we understand deja vu is essentially like you're in a waking moment of your life and feeling like you've been someplace before. You've been through this experience before, and probably you have. Maybe as part of a pattern in that waking life, or maybe you had a sleeping dream, an REM dream of that experience, and now playing it out through the physical reality, through your life experience. Synchronicities and serendipity, those are two words that have become very important to me. And yes, synchronicities, in a manner of speaking, yes, they are planned. But like everything in this life, we have our free will, and we have to make a decision to move towards our destiny, move towards honoring this plan. And you notice as you rise in vibration, yes, I think Tricia touched upon this, you need to heal yourself. You need to put yourself in a space where you can really identify with what it is you need to do with your path, rather than just saying, hey, I want $1 million and let's just go on a trip to the Bahamas or something. That's all well and good, but what I've learned about is not so much about me and my own experience, but rather about the experience. It's not about making it about money, but about aspects of the experience. And if money is meant to be a part of that experience, then it will be. Along with travel, education, medical, whatever it is you need. If when the synchronicities start to come together, as vibration rises and things start to click, if you will, That's part of the plan coming together. And that comes through the healing, comes through growing and, expanding into consciousness and connecting through love. Serendipity, much the same way, these very unexpected things that happen to us, but yet have that magical quality, that very spiritual, dreamlike quality. One of those serendipities for me is my band, Quantum Beings of the Miraculous. Mentioned that I'm a DJ and a hand drummer. Okay, I've been a DJ since I was about 16 years old. I'm 51 now. So I love my DJing, always have. I have as much fun in the DJ booth now as I did when I was 16 and playing my first high school dances. But somehow, I used to work in the music business. I've been a nightclub and concert promoter, of course, like I said, DJ for a lot of years. So I've worked a lot with musicians over the years. And as a DJ, I've had the good fortune of getting to jam with some musicians from time to time. I've jammed with live drummers and live percussionists, and I've jammed with saxophone players and keyboard players and such. It's been a lot of fun. I love to jam with live musicians and drop beats and do the things that I do, mixing. So one day I was showing up at one of my longtime brother's homes, and a place where he and some folks were just jamming, and I did a couple of them I knew, a couple of them I was just meeting. And so my buddy, his name's Nine, just like the number 9. He tells me, "Hey Rex, come on up. We're jamming on Saturdays. Love to just bring the gear. Maybe you can spin some stuff for us, and maybe just drop some beats." I'm like, "Oh, that sounds great. I'd love to." And so I started doing this on these Saturdays, and about the third Saturday in, I'm laying down some beats and kind of doing one of my own little remix things that I do. And next thing I know, I got my drummer sitting down. He's playing with me. Cool. All right. This is one of the reasons I'm here. I want to jam with some live musicians. Cool. Next thing I know, the keyboard player is playing, or ditch player, she's playing. Bass player picks up the guitar, and then my vocalist, before she writes lyrics, she likes to read from a book. She'll actually create her melody when she's and by reading, just picking a book and just reading out of a book before she writes these actual lyrics for the song. And she was doing that. And I was like, holy smokes, this is cool. I'm jamming with this entire band. All right, woohoo, And by the next week, we redid that same piece, and then we started doing another piece, and they were turning into actual songs. And I'd realized Katie, the lead singer, wrote lyrics for the first thing we were jamming the week before. And I'm like, hey, wait a second. I'm looking around, and nobody actually said anything, but I'm looking at myself going, wait a second. I think I'm in a band. I'm actually in a band. This is so cool. So with that, I was a member of Quantum Beings of the Miraculous. This is about 3.5 years ago. Now, fast forward at about 18 months, we're going to about 2 years ago now. And again, we're working on music, we're jamming, and we were on some piece that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And there was some congas that were just sitting out there. We've got instruments all over this place that we jam at. So there's a set of congas that are sitting there, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go play the congas. I don't know why, but I'm just going to go play them. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to go play them. So anyway, I'm rocking out on the congas, having a great old time, and just realizing, wait a second, one of the, like I said, so many things in my head have changed since my near-death experience, and I hadn't tried this before. All of a sudden, I'm seeing all these rhythmic patterns in my head going off, and I think because of my martial arts training, I was able to reproduce some of these things that I envisioned in my head with the drums, and I found myself really getting into it and really having fun with it. And so I fell in love with it. And because my bandmates are so awesome and so supportive, even though I'm the one non-musician in the group, they're all multi-instrumentalists. They're all brilliantly talented individuals. And they're so supportive of me. And they're like, yeah, that's great. Let's play. Do that in the song. That's cool. Needless to say, I am now a hand drummer. I play congas, I play bongos, djembes, jambukas. I'm into the drumming thing, and I do finger roll tech. I do all these crazy things I never imagined because my head works differently now. And had I not tried this, I would have never known, wow, I can play. I'd like to think that my next step is, I'm going to sit down and hopefully figure out how to play the whole kit. That's going to take a little longer, but in the meantime, I'm in a band. I'm a musician. I'm an artist. Something I've never thought of myself as being before, and something about that is just I guess a form of rebirth took place when that happened. And of course, that is a perfect way to transition into life aspirations and envisioning what can you be down the road. What are you right now? What do you see yourself as right now? How do you see yourself growing? Where are you going to be in 6 months, a year, 5 years from now? Where do you see yourself? What kind of a person are you in 5 years? What are you doing? What kind of projects are you into? When I think about my book, which just literally, I got my physical copies of my book just yesterday. So, that's brand new for me. So again, my life aspirations, I'm doing all kinds of daydreaming, all kinds of visualizing about my future with my book, my talks, my presentations. I want to grow this thing. I'd love to take this all over the world. And that's my life aspiration. I'm dreaming of this. Same with quantum beings. I can't wait. I mean, we have this big show. We've got belly dancers, fire performers, and all these things going on. And our music is very danceable and it's very spiritual. And I mean, I'd love to take this all over the world. And I dream about this. I fantasize about this. And something that I've learned from the near-death experience is that anything is possible. Now, will this all go worldwide? Is this all going to be a whole international thing? Right this second, I'm not going to sit here and make any form of guarantees, but that's what I'm dreaming about. And I believe that's incredibly possible. And yes, that's my goal. That's where I want to move towards. But not just for me, as we talk about, as we move forward into this, but about the idea of expanding into consciousness so that all of us are moving forward together in one form or another, no matter what we are, what we're doing, where we are in our experience. Because love can be experienced and expressed in just an infinity of different ways. This is a little reflection of how I think of the divine, how I think of God. This whole vast, super macro, multi-universal experience, if you will, that's the singular divine reality. That's the singular divine experience. Basically, for God to know all, for God to be the all, God is also the experience of the all. So as such, God, this divine source consciousness, this pure source being, is actually experiencing right along with us, experiencing as we're experiencing, through our minds, through our thoughts, through our learning processes, our feelings, our fears, our hopes, our everything. So whether we believe it or not, or know it or not, the divine is always with us. If for no other reason, just from that capacity alone, and never mind talking about the soul level, which is of course where the divine in all of us lives. But again, talking about waking state realities, just even the expression of what I'm talking about right here is invoking that of a dream. As said here, a dream is a thought is a dream. All these thoughts, all these ideas, they have that dream process. We're speaking of this in the waking state right now. Are you familiar with the hypnagogic state? I imagine most of you probably are. I find this to be one of the most powerful states, especially in this life, being in these physical bodies. For somebody that's very practiced at meditating, you can learn how to do this. And if you're not practiced at meditating, basically what the hypnagogic state is, imagine that space, or just think of that space that you've had a long day, you just went to bed, and you're right on the verge of falling asleep, but you haven't drifted off into sleep just yet. The hypnagogic state is kind of that in-between spot where you've completely let go of the physical reality because you're about to fall asleep, but you haven't quite nodded off just yet. This is a really powerful space to be because you can still be cognizant. You can still have a sense of even that more superficial ego thought to guide the hypnagogic state. If you have something that you want to think about, you have something you would like to explore, maybe it's an answer, a deeper answer you seek, or maybe there's just simply a solution to a situation in one of your relationships. It's a fantastic space with which to explore. And because it's a thought space, it moves at the speed of thought, is malleable as thought. Because we've talked about the REM state. There are so many layers of this REM state. And I feel like you can have these transformative experiences, near-death type experiences in this REM state. The sleep state is a way to open the door to the soul being, to that source part of us. And again, everything we're talking about, this whole idea of this presentation, the talk, these thoughts, this journey that we're on, it's all a dream unto itself. Now, especially for everyone here, I would imagine, especially the near-death experiencers, and I just want to throw something out there so I don't forget to say this at some time during the talk. Yes, Well, this near-death experience thing is, on the one hand, has been an incredible gift. I won't deny that one bit. But there's also was quite the price to pay to come into this knowledge. And I feel like for me personally, a lot of that had to do with just really where I was in my life, and a lot of it having to do with I just wasn't listening. I wasn't getting it. I wasn't, hearing. And I had a tendency to do things the hard way. So Spirit, okay, Spirit definitely took a more extreme approach to get my attention, and thankfully it worked. What I'm getting at is you don't have to have a near-death experience to have an awakening, to evolve towards this knowledge, this sensitivity, this empathy, this intuition. It's already a part of you. It's already a part of every one of us. I mean, nothing any of us is saying is something that anyone cannot experience at any point in their life, even in this physical life. It's always with us. Okay. Let's talk about intuition. Psychic ability, intuition, we talk about precognition. All these things come from the source layers. The deeper we go beyond this physical layer, the more malleable and closer to the thought layers we get to, and also the less separation there tends to be until you reach a layer that is pure non-locality, meaning it's all one interconnected, intertwined, vast expanse of conscious experience, meaning the information of existence is there. Intuition taps into that. That's, of course, I think there's other ways to do this, but in my experience, this has been a key for me to utilize my intuition, is working through these spaces. And when we get to the meditation part, hopefully the meditation brings us into the space where it helps you, if you're not already there, already tapping into that, it helps you to find that, and then after the meditation, be able to go back anytime you want. We talked a little bit about moments of epiphany. I get these crazy downloads sometimes, and a lot of it has come since a near-death experience, but I'm realizing it's not just, say, because of the bump to the head or something. It's more because my focus has shifted, my vibration has shifted, my vision has shifted, which allows me to have a certain openness to my thought process. So when an idea comes to me, no matter how abstract or how far removed it may be from that moment in space-time I may be, I know there's a truth to it. So even if I don't get it in the moment, I listen to it, I honor it, act on it, and when I get to the other side of it, I'm always looking back going, wow, I'm sure glad I listened to my intuition, and I got it, and I followed that epiphany. Out of body is another big one. As we'll get into when we get to the meditation portion, my NDE, again, NDEs, the experiences themselves are always unique. My NDE seems to have a certain similarity to the way Tricia described, I think it was her father's NDE. I don't know why. I'm not suggesting I was necessarily a dumb person. I consider myself reasonably intelligent prior to my NDE, but I don't know why my experience was this big, crazy downloads I just keep getting it, and you'll see some of it if you read my book here. You'll see some of it there, but then I've got 2 more books already nearly finished that go into the depths of all these crazy downloads about karma, about past lives, about the soul experience, about God, about so many things. But it came again through this field. My out of body is not literally out of body. In my NDE, I did not travel really anywhere. I didn't go anywhere. There was no sense of space-time. I had no sense of really me. But yet, I was not my body in that moment. But in my case, I wasn't tethered to anything. I simply was being itself. And in that moment, it's almost like I could go, understand, connect with nothing more than a thought. It gets to the next point, which I will harp on time and time again, is the imagination. And we really are only limited by the bounds of our imagination. If we feel like it's possible, we believe it's possible, well, there's a really good chance you can manifest that, no matter how remote that possibility may seem in the moment. The imagination allows us to look outside the box. If we're stuck in the middle of something, you're not getting the answers where you want to see it, then tap into that imagination. It'll take you places well outside of that moment you may be in, And that may be where you find your answer that you can take back with you into that moment in time and then create a potentially positive outcome to that situation. So there's just so many ways we can go utilizing intuition and epiphany and out of body as we grow, not only in ourselves, but understanding as we make these connections, we're expanding into one another, expanding consciousness, expanding into the divine, expanding into soul being. So let's take a moment to think about our childhood. I mean, my childhood was a long ways ago for me. It was a long, long time ago. There were a lot of things about my childhood I'd forgotten about. I mean, it's amazing, like when I was writing my book, for example, how when I started writing the autobiographical aspect, when I realized that was the direction this book was going to go, I started right into all the negative stuff. Yes, I have lots of stuff in my life, lots of abuses, lots of examples of hardships and just, things that kids, arguably shouldn't have to experience. I have those, like a lot of us do. And I realized because of that, I lost sight of the beauties of my childhood. I mean, I was a bully child. I wasn't always treated so great, but I wasn't happy through a lot of my childhood. I mean, I had my parents divorced when I was in the 6th grade. And I mean, this whole thing. Not to mention my first best friend died when I was 8 years old. So my point is this. I look back on that childhood and thought, wow, there's so many of these hard things that happen. And that's all I wrote about at first, as part of the transformation of my life now. And then I thought to myself, that's not really honoring my life if I really only focus on these negative aspects of my childhood. So I started to think about this. What were my childhood dreams? What were some of the things that I reflected on when I was literally, like, say, 5 years old? And I'll share with you one of my favorites. I mentioned the first best friend I ever had. His name was Jeff. I called him Jeffy. He was 11 years old, and I met him when I was 5, and when I was 8, and he was 11, he passed away. But we had, when I look back now, especially seeing my life the way I see it now, we had this really magical connection. I mean, kids, even best friends, fight. But Jeffy and I think in the 3 or so years, of course, 3 years isn't that much time, but when you're 8 years old, that's almost half my little life. But in that time, I think Jeffy and I were actually maybe mad at each other once, maybe twice. Otherwise, we got along just beautifully. Wonderful, wonderful. But one of my favorite dreams is we were both always into sci-fi. We loved Star Trek and Lost in Space and shows like that. So we would oftentimes, go out into his backyard, and he had this big, monkey bar set up, and we would be he'd be Captain Kirk, I'd be Mr. Spock, or he'd be John Robinson, or I'd be Don Robinson, Jupiter 2 from Lost in Space, and we would just go on these epic adventures together, and it was just. I mean, I don't think we have time for you to dive into one of those adventures, but they're especially for such little kids, they were really imaginative. I mean, it was like, we could have been making sci-fi movies or writing episodes of Star Trek back then. That probably would have been awesome. So I ask you, when you look back, what do you think about in your childhood? Do you only remember those hardships? And if you were abused and you had those kinds of difficulties, surely in between it, there must have been moments of peace, moments of happiness, moments of that childlike innocence. So do you remember what you dream about as a child? And if you do, perhaps let's think about that. Just take a moment for right now, and so we can move along, so I have a lot more time here. Just remember the beauty, that moment when we were all innocent. Now, here's always an interesting question as we start talking about childlike dreams. So fantasy versus reality, what is the difference? Well, one comment I want to make about that. Now, let's take say a car accident. You've got 10 people standing on the same street corner who saw that accident. Now, of those 10 people, most of them are probably going to say something pretty similar. However, chances are no 2 of them are going to say exactly the same thing. Of those 10 people, there's probably a couple of them that are going to say something completely removed from what the others were saying. So now we can make arguments about who's right and who's wrong, and maybe who's more realistic and who's not, based on, say, someone's observation of a car accident. Who's really to sit here and say whose reality is somehow more real, more accurate, more true than somebody else's? Now, I don't want to get too far off topic here, but this gets us into autism and maybe schizophrenia and other mental, what are considered mental fallacies. Don't have time to dive into this, but I feel like these are different levels of the conscious experience. I don't see these people as necessarily something being wrong with them. If anything, I've met autistic people that I thought to myself, wow, I would like to emulate that energy. What a beautiful, beautiful soul, even if I don't necessarily know the person, because there is something about that person that's just different. It doesn't make them smarter, less smart, and what have you. I mean, and maybe, again, you can get into the intrinsic side of things and make that argument, and this is where we get into what is fantasy versus reality. And we can make that argument all day long. You can have academics arguing about that all day long, and they're not going to agree. You know, you can have laymen, you know, it doesn't matter. People have their perceptions of the reality. And all I can say about that is wherever you may be in that experience, wherever you may be in that perception of that reality, do your best to honor that experience and live it with heart, with love. I know we're getting a little low on time here, but let's typically go through this. It's different. Again, talk about just so many ways to dream and so many ways to think about the experiential consciousness here. Think about your experience, even in the person where you are right now, as we go through and think about, like we talked about earlier, imagining one's own personal life, imagining where you're going to be 6 months from now, you know, a year, 5 years from now. Those visualizations, that dream practice is important, but then let's think about further levels of growth. Again, we don't think we would be here unless we weren't also interested in these aspects of the experience as well. Let's talk about the idea for a moment. What resonates with respect to incarnations and lifetimes? Now, I want to put it out there. Yes, most of us, I think, will agree on the idea of past lives. And we think about past lives, we think about past human lives, past lives on Earth. Of course, with respect to the lifetimes like this, we could be talking about, you know, a lifetime someplace in the Andromeda galaxy, you know, lifetimes that exist even chronologically in the future from where we are. All these different points of energy could be like a convection to where you are right now. This could be a convection point for all of that to create and manifest a person and the experience that you're having in this here and now. Now, incarnations, I use that word because we're not just talking about a human life. We're not even talking about animal lives. And yes, to me, my experience in all of this, there's one soul. In my experience, I found that there is one soul. There's not an animal soul. There's not an alien soul. There's not a human soul. There's one soul. There's the soul of the divine, the soul of God. And it's that soul having infinite experiences through infinite incarnations, which is where we all come in, including animals, plants, trees, and planets. How many people here believe Mother Earth is alive? Feeling like an overwhelming everyone, I'm pretty sure. So then how many people here believe the sun is alive? How about the galaxy, the universe itself? Is it all alive? Of course it is. And these are all part of a soul path. Even think about yourself. Think about all the thoughts you've had throughout the course of a lifetime. Think about the dreams you've had, as we talk about dreams, the worlds that have risen and fallen in the confines of your imagination and your dreams and your ideas, and just anything that has to do with thought. I mean, it just gets almost overwhelming to where you could say, you know what? We are each a universe unto ourselves, having a veritable universe of experience. And physiologically speaking, that's not too far removed, considering we know that all the cells, all these organic pieces of our body, even though they're all working together to create what we are and to have this physiological experience, they're still, individual cell is still having its own individual experience as that particular cell. When you think about that, billions upon billions, get into the atomic structures I mean, trillions of atoms, atoms that are born of the very cosmic inflation, the very Big Bang itself. All that information lives in every one of us, even atomically speaking, scientifically speaking, that's true. Of course, we understand now these areas of science are just bringing out areas of information that the Vedas, the Kabbalists, and the native peoples, and many others have been talking about for centuries, if not millennia. But I love it. I love seeing science and spirituality taking steps towards coming together, because I think ultimately there's going to be a deep and powerful science of metaphysics, if you will, that's going to embody all of these aspects all together. But again, I'm getting off myself in a tangent because I get really excited about this stuff. So as we talk about those different incarnations, imagine what you can be beyond this physical existence. Now, when I talk about this, we're not even just talking, say, planets and galaxies and such. What about an existence as a guardian angel, a guide? I feel like my mother, when my mother passed, she became a guardian angel. I mean, I still feel her soul presence with me, guiding me, you know, reminding me, showing me things. You know, you can have an experience as an angel. You can have an experience as so many different levels of conscious being. We hear people talking about, and this is not my area of expertise, I have my visions of it, and we won't get into it right now, but you hear about fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional, eighth dimensional beings and forms of existence. And whether it's literally, you know, intrinsically like that, the point is there are these different levels of experience. There's different ways to experience. I mean, literally just think on Earth. Think of the experience of a shark with its ability for being able to detect electrical signals. Could you imagine what your reality would be like if you had the ability to detect electrical signals around you? Could you imagine what your reality would be like if you're like a bat, had an echolocation ability, or dolphins with their echolocation porpoises, I think, have that echolocation ability. Imagine if your reality was like that, especially maybe you didn't have the ability to see, visualize. Imagine what that reality might look like. And you start to get in a sense, when you start getting outside of the brick and mortar three-dimensional reality, again, the possibilities for existence and experience, it's again, it's endless. It's virtually infinite and eternal. This aspect of it, because there are so many probabilities and possibilities that make up the entirety of the experience. Talking about that intuition of being, that spiritual realm, everything we're talking about, these deeper dream layers through the hypnagogic state, through the REM state, through daydreaming, synchronicities, and serendipities, are these glimpses to the spiritual realm. It's that connection to our intuition of being, listening to guidance. To me, is listening to the angels, listening to the ascended masters, listening to that which is resonating for you, because we all have, again, a unique set of guides, because we are all on a unique experience. And the biggest thing here is envisioning the soul self. That part of us, when we go home, when there's nothing left, the experience is all melted away, karma is all melted away. We're in a space of peace, love, space of being, simply being in the most placid space, clear, unfettered. That is soul self, that is soul being. That's home. And that, talking about that, again, there's a lot to that, and I look forward to, like I said, this whole talk right here has so many more workshops that are going to come out of it. And this is something I look very forward to talking about here in the near future, is getting into the soul self and what that means, and what it means bringing back this energy into our life here in the here and now. Everything we've been talking about, coming to understand ourselves and who and what we really are. Everything that you're thinking about, I'm hoping as I'm talking, you're thinking, you're visualizing, you're along with this journey, and everything you're seeing and taking in and visualizing, it's all a reflection of the person you are, what you are in this place in the experience. As I grew into this and I continue to learn to do this, it helped me so much to gain a perspective about what is my best course of action right now, based on whatever is going on, be it a relationship situation, career situation, working on the book, training, health, any of it. Let this be a reflection, an honest reflection. And one of the biggest keys here is being honest. You have to be completely and totally objective with yourself here. Because sometimes we get information we don't want to get. You know, as I was growing, purging, doing the healing through all my darknesses that were still within me post NDE, it was a lot of work. And there were times I got things that I'd like to think that I was further along than where I was, that I had to realize, oh no, I've really got to contend with this. This is something that's very important, that if I don't work this out, it's going to hinder me on this path in honoring what is to be my destiny. So I use it as a reflection of where I was in my experience, and also moving closer to being the person that I always believed I was meant to be. The person that has always been within me, but that is now emerging. I'm growing just like everybody else. This is a journey for me, just like everyone. I'm not sitting here like I'm ahead of anybody or behind anybody. We're in this together. Like I said, this is not about my experience, but it's about the experience and sharing in this together. So we talk about spheres of reality and expanding into consciousness. I use these circles because the sphere of reality isn't necessarily perfectly circular. But what I mean by that is, if you take a person, just for example, you've got a person maybe who is a very devout Christian person. They go to maybe like a Southern Baptist type of a church. They have a little bit more of a fire and brimstone type approach to the way they perceive God and heaven and hell and things like that. Now, I'm thinking in terms of, and again, this is very rudimentary because everybody is very dynamic and very complex. So I don't want to try to simplify this or shortchange anybody, because I don't mean this at all. But what I'm trying to say is that's a sphere of reality with which they have to work. So when they're looking for, say, a partner in life, what they want to do in decisions maybe in their work life, making friends, where they choose to go to church, maybe they've got an issue that's come up in their life that maybe somebody's lied about something and it's going to hurt somebody else, and they've got to decide what to do in that situation. They have to draw on the information that's part of their sphere of reality in terms of where they are in their experience of what they believe in that moment. So what I'm talking about is the idea of, if the answers, because sometimes the answers just aren't there. And one of the ways that we grow, say you take this little inner circle here, I can't put my finger on it and point it to you, but take the inside dark circle and imagine the answer to this person's question may be somewhere to the top of the bigger circle. And for them to find that answer, they have to expand their reality to do so. Because one thing I've noticed, as my reality has expanded, as I've grown and learned through these experiences, and I put it like this, so you think, well, it's just going to expand in that one direction. But the thing about expanding reality is when you dig deep to find an answer to something, oftentimes other things come out with it. And that's what I found time and time again, which also became such a powerful part of my healing as I move towards where I'm at right now, where I feel like I'm on the downhill side of that and I'm ready to take on the next step of my mission, and do so with confidence, clarity, and knowing that I am fulfilling my destiny and my highest path. Again, there's still plenty of room for growth, plenty of room for learning, but I'm doing my best to continue to look for ways to expand and continue to think outside of whatever current box I may be stuck in, because we all get that way. And if we're going to push outside of that box, it's, what is that next plateau? What's that next level? Where can I grow? How can I get better? Even it's like if you're a musician or you're a football player or you're a computer engineer, whatever you're doing, practice makes perfect. Okay, the next photo, sorry, it's a little bit blurry. I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly because I know we're getting close to 6 o'clock here. But I just want to talk about perspectives of the reality and how we get caught up into these little boxes, how we perceive a reality to be. In a way, you can look at these creatures and think they all have everything they need. They've got their food, water, they've got shelter if they need it. Obviously, the duck, he has his pattern, maybe flies north somewhere for the summertime, comes back to this place maybe in the wintertime, but it's a set pattern. And you get so stuck in a pattern, you don't see outside of that pattern and realize how much really could be around you. Yes, this picture is pure fiction, it's pure fantasy. We just talked about that. But it illustrates beautifully the point that even in just the confines of this single little picture right here, how many possibilities for experience exist. And not just possibilities for experience, but possibilities for different kinds of experience. Now, this is where choices come in. Where one choice could lead to perhaps ending up lunch for that caiman who's sitting at the end of that pond. Or another possibility may be an enlightenment and growth and expanding of a reality, perhaps as a result of maybe flying with one of the birds that are up in the tree over here. I notice we've got an eagle and we've got a hawk. Both of these birds are incredibly adventurous animals, and who's to say, again, just destroying these abstractions out there, but these experiences can come from places you may not expect. And even in the confines of this picture, we all know that there's a much greater picture still yet to look at with respect to growing, expanding into consciousness, connecting, and experiencing the love of this life. Now, this is just a little bit of an extension of what we've been talking about already with just expanding spheres of consciousness, and how sometimes when we're, connecting with other people, think about each of these spheres as an individual person, and a dynamic of maybe you're having these are 4 people that are having a conversation together, or 5 people having a conversation together, depending on what having, and you're looking at basically the differences in each person's maybe sphere of where they perceive their reality to be. And it makes for some interesting dynamics about where potentially a conversation like this can go. I like, for example, let's take the let's go to the bottom row. Now we've got the 2 in the middle of the bottom row. Let's go to the one with the big circle in the bottom row. I like this because all of these circles are connecting. So this suggests maybe there's aspects of this conversation, aspects of their experience, or perhaps their topic of discussion where they are connecting. These are the areas where they touch and they relate, but then these are the areas where perhaps they expand and go in different directions. Now, the ones that are inside the bigger circle, perhaps the person who's got this larger circle just has maybe the same kind of a reality. Perhaps they just expand into something a little bit more, I don't know, perhaps hypothetically multi-universal. And perhaps the one that's maybe like slightly outside of the circle, they haven't quite gone there. They've got a very different kind of a path that they're walking. Now, again, I can't emphasize enough, this is not about who's more right or wrong than anybody else. It's simply about honoring your path and where you are in that path. In any path can be lived in love. As a martial artist, I appreciate the yin and yang symbol. Part of my art is Chinese. It's Kuntao Silat. It's a Chinese Indonesian art. And the yin and yang symbol is part of the Chinese philosophy, getting into Taoism and such. And as a near-death experiencer, there are many aspects of Taoism that resonate for me. And I appreciate the balance that this presents, light, dark, the male to female, the superficial to the ether, and so on. One of the biggest, most powerful tools in healing through all of this has been the opportunity to write this book. Yes, I can't emphasize enough. Even if you don't want to publish it, you might just write your life story. If not, spend a lot of time meditating on it, because something that helped me to heal is being able to take the way I see life now and take that approach to an old memory. Now, for example, when I was in junior high, I got picked on pretty relentlessly. Parents just divorced. I was a big, chunky, fat kid. I just got picked on a lot. And it'd be very easy to just be bitter about that and think, oh, those kids, even to this day, it was just so miserable. And yeah, it was. At the time, it was nightmarish. But the point I'm making is, as an adult, as a spiritualist, especially as a near-death experiencer, I recognize the experiences that were involved. I also recognize and even take responsibility for my own experience. Even if I wasn't perhaps technically at fault per se, I still take that responsibility, and I'm going to still honor that experience and say, okay, now I can look back and see why this happened. My mother, who was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful human being. I just want to make sure to be really clear. When my mom passed, we were in the most beautiful space, and she's one of the most amazing human beings I will ever know in this lifetime. But for those couple of years after she got divorced, she was a nightmare. And as a kid, I didn't always understand. I was getting picked on at school. I got home from school and I got yelled at by my mom. It was a rough few years there. About a 3-year period was pretty darn rough there. And as a little kid, I knew my mom was hurting, but I didn't fully understand. I mean, we're talking 11, 12, 13-year-old kid here. And then as an adult, I can look back and, oh, I get it. My mom's whole world was just completely devastated and blown up, uprooted. And I mean, I've heard people talk about, having been through their breakups or divorces and relationships that don't work. And we know, I've not been married, but I've definitely had my heart broken. I've definitely broken up, and that stuff's devastating. And I get it as an adult. But the point is, I take these memories, this understanding, I apply it to these memories of my youth that I haven't thought about since then. So because I haven't thought about it, the last memory I have of that is as a child. So I'm remembering it with the hurts of a child instead of thinking about it in terms of the person that I am now. And having gone through all these different parts of my past, all these different areas where I've hurt, that were damaged, that I even forgot about, I was able to flip that vibrational script and take that which was dark in my life and make it light, especially now that I'm in this place where I realize that all these things that have happened, all of this experience has led to this place that I'm at right now. And that's a case of flipping that vibrational script, turning that darkness that has been my life into something that is light and beautiful. I'm going to take all that construed negativity, and it's now something beautiful, something I can now give back to the world. with love, something positive, something hopefully maybe even illuminating, who knows. Okay, we're almost through here. William James was a psychologist and an author. He was the first to teach psychology in America. Actually put together a psychology curriculum here in America, I think in the early 20th century. I love this. The greatest discovery of our generation, and I think there's a lot of great discoveries. I don't know if I'm going to call it the greatest, but it's a lot of great discoveries. But anyway, a great discovery of our generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. As you think, so shall you be. Yes, there may be a lot to that, but that, in very simple terms, is incredibly true. William Arthur Ward, another interesting individual. He was actually a pretty devout Christian. But when you read his works, he was primarily an article writer, but again, mostly 20th century, but he was writing memes before memes were cool. And here's one of my favorites. He's got all these wonderful, just beautiful, loving expressions. And this one is perfect for this talk. If you can imagine it, you can achieve it. If you can dream it, you can become it. Believe that. And I don't mean to harp on the old keep calm memes, but it works so perfectly for this one because it is about calm, peace, being in a beautiful, peaceful, and placid side of love. It's in that calm that we can access those depths, those parts of our deeper dreams, our deeper self, right into the very core soul of our soul being itself. So I realize we're right at 6 o'clock. Do we want to do questions, or should we go into the meditation? I don't, unfortunately, maybe I need to bring down my PowerPoint to see if there's any questions on here because I can't.
Actually, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Awesome. Then there's 2 questions and they're short ones. So I will just ask them if that's okay. Or,
yeah,
or
great.
You can bring down your PowerPoint either way.
Well, I'd love to leave it up because I'd like to I have a picture coming up next time I'd like to use for the meditation.
So one of the questions is, Andy says, awesome discussion. So is the point of it all for God to experience itself in every facet possible? If so, is love the vehicle for exploration?
Yes, simply yes. This is all about the experience of God because at some point there was only the essence of love, life, and mind, and that was it. There was no experience to go along with it. It was just the essence of being, and only the essence of being. And it's in a way, it's almost like Eve in the Garden of Eden. It's a metaphor to me, the whole story, but it's almost like maybe God gave into the temptation of the most fundamental question we all ask ourselves, which is, what am I? Who am I? And with that, I believe, came the first dualities of dark and light. And with that came the gray area, which is where we come in. This is a very, very abbreviated version of it. And hence this infinity of experience. So yeah, so what was the other part of the question? The second part of that?
Is the point of it all for God to experience itself in every facet possible? If so, is love the vehicle for exploration?
Okay, that's what I wanted to thank you. Yes, love is the vehicle for exploration, but we don't have time to get into this here, but that can mean an awful lot of things. Love is not a doormat. Love, and to me, does what's best for the person, the situation. It brings it to the ultimate state of fulfillment. And if part of that process involves getting kicked in the teeth, then guess what? Love's going to kick you in the teeth. At least that's my experience. And I think people are going to disagree with that. But to me, love
I agree.
That highest space. But ultimately, you endure those hardships because depending on where you're at when you decide to walk that path of love, you may have quite the learning curve and quite a process to get back to that vibrational level of the love. So yes, love is at the core of all of it. But keep in mind, if we start talking about demonic or devil type experiences, these uber dark forms of consciousness, even at the very core of all of them, they're all, just like us, part of the soul experience. They are all born of light. So while their light may have disappeared, maybe covered under by layers upon layers of dingy, nasty, mucky dark, that love is still the undercurrent of the experience, and they too will find their way home.
Awesome. Well, I'm actually going to stop the recording here, and I just wanted to say thank you for a beautiful presentation, and then I'm going to start it again for your meditation. But wow, I love the energy and all that you shared. It was amazing. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.